Hello, John. Is that you? You're up next. Thank you for being patient. How's it going?
How's it going? First thing I want to say is thank you to everybody in the CLP Discord. I've been feeding them hand histories, and their feedback has been absolutely fantastic. They've been helping me so much. So, big shout out to the guys in Discord.
Oh, awesome. What's your Discord handle?
It's just JP Poker.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, again, that's one of the benefits of being a CLP subscriber is you get access to all our strategy channels over in Discord. We've got a bunch of channels. We also have forums as well. Like if you want to post hands up in forums, and our buddy Nate has his own channel too for some of you CLP subs that you can actually ask to get into, where he does his own strat, but he's quite active over there. So shout out to all those frequent posters in the CLP Discord. Okay, John. So where's this played out of?
This is out of Resorts World Catskills in New York.
Okay. Yep, Catskills, which is what, like 2 hours north of New York City or something like that?
Roughly, yeah, give or
Yeah.
take.
What's the largest gate? Did they get any 510 there?
It's very rare. Maybe sometimes on a Saturday, but PLO has kind of been taken over. They've been having a pretty big 5-5 game that goes off, but that's usually the biggest that the room gets.
Okay. And is this a 2-5 game?
This is a 2-5 game, 1K cap.
Okay, 1K cap. Okay.
We are 1200 effective
Okay.
on the button
Okay.
with King of Hearts, 9 of Clubs.
Okay.
So the cutoff limps.
Cut off limps, huh?
In real time, I felt like King 9 against this certain player's limping range is just way ahead. And I decided to ISO here to 25, which is probably not the best thing to do, but that's what I did in real time.
Why is that not the best thing to do?
I don't know, I got a lot of crap for doing this with King 9 offsuit here. I don't know, it just feels like I have so many better hands to be doing with, and King 9 is just on the cusp.
You're going to open King 9 off if it gets folded to you on the button, right?
Definitely.
I mean, this is how... when I do a very sort of simple approach to preflop for people, and it's very, very simple when people ask me about like upfront limpers and isolations, then I say, if you want to look at it, I usually will ignore the first limp and open what I would normally open from that position. But then when it gets to like 2 or 3 limps in front, then you really got to pull it back and really raise for value with like your opening range from up front. And then you can start to sometimes develop some over limps of playable hands that you wouldn't raise from up front. Of course, you got to watch rake considerations. I mean, a cutoff limp is pretty weak. The funny thing is that the theory, talking about like limping, you're actually, if you took a couple steps back and looked at this theoretically, if everybody was playing the right types of ranges, you should probably be isolation raising much tighter than just straight opening, because that limp should be strong. But that's not the case though in live poker. I mean, cutoff limp. I mean, this guy's not developing any type of,
Right.
he's not developing some sort of advanced strategy. I would King 9 off. I mean, obviously it's not a great hand. I would probably fold King 8 and raise. I mean, King 10 is a no-brainer raise, right? King 10
Definitely.
plus. So I'm fine with it. So here raise to 25. Okay.
Okay. And the small blind and big blind call,
Okay.
and the cutoff folds.
And the cutoff folds. Interesting. Okay. So 3 ways. You've got position. You've got position. The pot's right around 80. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Flop is King of Spades, King of Diamonds, Jack of Spades.
King of Spades, King of Diamonds, Jack of Spades. You flop trips against the blinds. Front door spades out there. Okay.
So the main villain in this hand, the small blind, leads out for 25.
Into 80.
Yep. And just, I mean, literally 2 hands before this, I did get a pretty big bluff through against the same exact villain, and I did table it, so I guess that comes to play in my head a little later in the hand.
So does the big blind fold?
The big blind calls.
Big blind calls. So small blind leads for 25. Hero has King 9, King Jack as the button opener over the top of a cutoff limp who folds out. Small blind leads for 25. Big blind calls. I mean, the board is quite draw heavy in the form of spades and, some straight draws and things like that. I would think that ace king is going to 3-bet here pre-flop quite a bit. We talk about how some live players, they do play sometimes passively. So, I mean, obviously king 10 and king queen, you're losing to. There are a fair amount of draws out here. I might call here some of the time.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I mean, obviously if I had ace king, I would be much, much more apt to raise. But there are 4 kings in the deck. And a lot of times, like if you just raise it up, jacks and stuff will fold. You might get some value later on here. I don't know. This one's a little bit. I might call here and then just kind of see what develops. Obviously, if the turn's a brick and it gets checked to you, you can bet for sure. But I don't think this is always a slam dunk raise unless the guys are just like so
Right.
bad. Yeah.
So
So
I,
what did you
I,
do?
I did decide to raise here. I've had a fairly aggressive image at this table. I was kind of getting hit with the deck, and I did just show that bluff. So I felt like it was a good time to raise here, and I made it 130.
So hero raises to 130. And my only thing with that though is that on a paired board, again, it's kind of interesting. We've had a lot of calls here on the live stream today, especially that French guy from Montreal, with a lot of putting in money with some in between hands. Now you have trips, and again, the most basic thing in no limit cash games is you don't want to put yourself into a position where everything just weaker folds out and better continues. Now the board is quite draw heavy, but a lot of these guys don't. They'll play very, very defensively and just won't get involved when the board is paired with like a draw. So
Right.
if you go to one, like here, let me ask you this question. So you raise to 130. Let's say the small blind calls, right? And the big blind folds. I don't even remember what happened. You think that you have the best hand here most of the time? I'm asking you.
In real time, yes. Only because I was kind of leveling myself into thinking he would call lighter due to my aggressiveness previously. So in real time, yes, but in hindsight, it's very close in my head now.
Because, I mean, the one thing I'll say, and it will depend on where the call comes from. If you go to 130 and the small blind has led with a jack, right? So he leads with a jack for 25 big blind calls and you go to 130, he still has to worry about the guy behind him too. So I don't know how often he's calling with the jack. Now, if he folds and then the big blind calls, the big blind can have more jack X than him. The only reason why I say that is if this actually happens where the small blind, who's the one that's leading, calls, you might get into a situation where because you have king 9, sure, you could bet the turn if it got checked to you on a brick, but there might not be much value on a brick run out at the end betting because he's either going to have like busted spades or he's going to have a better king. So it's interesting when you have trip, just thinking a couple streets ahead here, like chess, like it's interesting when you have weak trips and you sort of think about what this guy's lead calling range is from the middle, that you might have if you're playing this as a raise and he calls, you might have a bet turn check back river no matter what. I'm getting ahead of myself. I don't even know what happened. So you go to
Right, right.
130. Okay. Yep.
And the small blind does call, and the
Okay.
big blind folds.
Oh, okay. So small blind calls, big blind folds. Okay. So this is exactly what I was saying. All right. So king jack here with king 9 off on the button, king of spades, king of diamonds, jack of spades. Okay. What's the turn?
The turn is the 8 of hearts.
Okay. I mean, that's a pretty big brick, right?
Yeah.
I assume he checks.
Yeah, he checks to me.
Okay, so this is what I'm talking about here. So this is probably a bet and then a check
Right.
down. Unless you boat up, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
I decided to bet pretty big here. I went 300.
I mean, again, like I said, going back, I got ahead of myself because I don't know how much jack X this guy has because he's got to worry about the big blind in between here.
Mm-hmm.
I do wonder if you are going to get called by. Now, if he's loosey-goosey and he's calling with like any nut flush draw and you say, okay, well, I'm just going for value here. This guy's going to call me. He's so bad he's calling me with queen 10. He's so bad he's calling me with spades. Okay, fine. But if you take this sizing, I think it would be a rather large mistake if the river is a brick and you don't check back. Because
Right.
that's how you're setting this one up. You're really trying to get, because I just think it's way too optimistic to put all this together and think that he's calling you down with like a jack.
So
You know what I'm
you
saying?
would say in this setup, it's more of a two street value hand in the way this is played out.
The way that this one's playing out, I really do. I think so, because you have the worst king, you know? So you bet 300.
Yep, and he calls very quickly.
So small blind calls. Because again, look at this. Like, he led the flop, call. You raised, he called with the guy behind him. Now he's calling almost a pot-sized bet here on the turn. So we're at 965. And by the way, you guys have looks like what, 650, 450, 650 or 750 left, right?
Yeah, I've written down 750 left.
750 left. Okay, so just under a pot size bet. Okay, so king jack 8, he calls. But you still think you're not like concerned that you don't have the best hand here. I'm just asking you.
In real time, I really felt like I did. I was kind of having tunnel vision here, and I really thought I did in real time.
By the way, this is the small blind too. Someone
Right.
saying that the big blind can have king 8, king deuce, but this is the small blind that called. Okay, what's the river?
The river is the 5 of diamonds.
Okay, so it's a brick. Any checks?
He does check.
Well, you already know what I'm going to do. Now, if you say, if this truly was like the big blind doing this, I think it would be a little bit different. Like this guy
Right.
says, I just saw it here a second ago. Somebody said king. Oh, this guy Benny Slav Casino Adventure. Big blind can have king 8, king deuce suited. Yeah, I think it's a little bit different if it was the big blind and instead of the small blind here. Maybe you can, see like somebody having like king X suited here. But again, he called in the small blind cold to 25. I mean, I don't know what games you guys are playing in, but even like how often is somebody calling in the small blind with king 3 suited in the small, it was cut off limp. This hero guy on the phone makes it 25 at a 2-5 game. How many players are calling with king 4 suited, king 3 suited in the small blind? Seems pretty.
It's definitely not expected, but it wouldn't really surprise me either.
Well, you know what I would do? I would check back. What did you do?
I did not check back. I did the complete opposite of that, and I went all in.
All in?
Yes.
So what are you trying to get called by?
Any hand that doesn't believe me, and that's worse than my hand.
Well, I assume that's a jack.
Those are my
right?
real-time thoughts, of course. But
I mean, that has to be a jack, right? Or like ace 8 of spades or something.
There's definitely not many kings that I beat that would really be here, like you said.
Listen, I think that what makes this hand, and I just keep highlighting it, what makes this hand the most important, if you're trying to work on your hand reading, the most important part of this hand is the fact that the big blind is in the hand and the fact that the small blind led and called your flop raise with the big blind behind him.
Right.
I just don't think that's Jack X.
Right.
And even if it is like once in a great while, you bet 300 on the turn and now you're all in the river. I mean, how often is somebody calling down here with Queen Jack as played? He'd have to lead flop, call, still has to worry about the guy behind you on the flop, by the way. So that's why I think that this is a check back. Now, if you have ace king, of course, right? Ace king or king queen, of course, right? King 10 is probably where it gets. King 10 is probably the same thing as king 9 here. King queen should probably be played for maximum value, like you played it if you had king queen, because of the fact that ace king gets 3-bet off a ton and jack gets 3-bet off a ton. So I feel like it's almost like free roll. Like maybe you'll chop sometimes and sometimes you'll get value from king 10, but with king 9, I think I just checked this back. So you went all in for 760 and what happened?
I did. He tanked for quite a while, and he did throw in the call. And he had ace king suited.
What a nit roll. Oh my God. He tanked?
I mean, it was only like a minute, but in my mind, it felt like a long time to tank with ace king.
Wow, that's really, I mean, I would have, if you called this one in and you had king queen, I would have been like, you played it fine. Once in a while, you're going to get a guy that's going to play ace king slow because he's scared, right? I am somewhat shocked, but I think you should play king queen for down to felt here. and you
Mm-hmm.
should check back in king 10 and king 9. And I probably would maybe just call. It's interesting because say you just called on the flop. We talked about that, right?
Right. Yeah.
How would the turn and the river play out? I assume he would just go bet, bet, and you would just go call, call, right?
Yeah. That most likely. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting hand. Thank you very much, John. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Bart. Have a good one.
All right, guys. Well, we went very, very long. Interesting calls here today. Yeah, if you do want to get on the call-in show, you can click on the link in the description. That will get you info on how to pre-submit your hand because we always screen the calls. Always looking for new callers too, by the way. So if you are a new caller, we will give you some priority. Shout out to everybody in the live chat for keeping it real and keeping it spicy. And we'll be back next week, same time. Thank you very much for joining me. And if you are not a subscriber to this YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, turn notifications on, and we'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.